this is a particular period of Jewish history that we're talking about. The era that we're basically locating all this in is the period that's called Second Temple Judaism. And that covers a range of time, but it's what happened after 535. The Jewish people had been captives in Babylon. In 538, they were released from Babylon. They go back and begin rebuilding a temple. They end up with a temple. This will be the Second Temple, of course, thus the period of Second Temple Judaism. They have a second temple to go to, but during this period, they rarely have any independence at all. And the Second Temple period runs from 538 to 70 AD, when the Second Temple was destroyed. Now, this is a complex period, and whenever, one of the things that bothers me from time to time is when people say, the Jews say, or the Jews then believed, because it's not always clear. Oftentimes somebody be saying the Jews had this many laws that they subscribed to, or the way that Passover was practiced was like this. Well, frankly, maybe it was and maybe it wasn't. And when are you talking about, and who are you talking about, and where are you talking about? Because the Judaism of the Second Temple period is more diverse even than what happens after 70 and the destruction of the temple and everything goes to synagogue practice. Even that is a little more stable than the Second Temple period, when people were all over the place. You know, there were twice as many people living in the diaspora, the dispersion of Jews around the Mediterranean, a dispersion that happened as a result of politics or better business, whatever, but people moved, and Judaism was spread out away from Palestine too. So there were a lot of forms of Judaism, so that some historians like to speak of Judaisms, plural, rather than of Judaism. I think you can still speak of Judaism if you make your focus a couple of things. All Jews were monotheistic. They believed in one God, the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. That was at the center of most every Jew's confession. And then the other thing, the Jews were people of the book, especially Torah, the teachings, the instruction. Torah can refer to the first 5 books of the Old Testament, the Pentateuch, or it can refer more generally to the teachings in general. That's sort of like we refer to the gospel to cover a lot of things. But most Jews subscribed to those couple of things, and yet the ways of manifesting your Judaism were quite diverse. I'll mention 4 because these are labels that come up in the New Testament, so we know some of these distinctions. There were the Sadducees. These were primarily upper-class people who wielded considerable political power. You can almost think of them sometimes, I think, as a sort of like a political party. The Sadducees were instrumental in the oversight of the temple, and were all about Levitical, the purity of the Levites and the sacrificial system. They oversaw all of that. They had a range of political opinions, but were generally agreeable to and supportive of Roman rule. The Sadducees had maybe the narrowest view of Scripture. They thought only Torah, only the first 5 books of the Bible were authoritative. They rejected the writings and the poetry, the moral laws of the Pharisees, all that stuff. The Sadducees also did not believe in angels or resurrection. Then there are the Pharisees, about whom we know maybe the most, and of course Paul has some connection to the Pharisees, seem to have had some Pharisaic training in his youth. It's funny how this ends up being the party that Jesus and the New Testament butts up against most often, because you might think that they would be the group most closest to the followers of Jesus. The Pharisees were fairly liberal in their understanding and interpretation of the Torah and the writings. Along with the Old Testament, they accepted the oral traditions as authoritative. And after the temple is destroyed in AD 70, Pharisaic Judaism, the Judaism of the rabbis and of synagogues, becomes Judaism. That's the Judaism that basically wins. Pharisees emphasize morality and family practices over temple-focused religion. Pharisees believed in the afterlife and in angels. Pharisees viewed the Roman government as acceptable as long as it didn't limit or contradict Jewish practices. There were also the Essenes. The Essenes were, that means the holy ones. The Essenes were the Hasidim. The Essenes were a group that, in protest to some of the cultural shifts that were taking, withdrew from wider society in order to form these communities, oftentimes in the desert, in which goods were shared. The most famous archaeological evidence of the movement is at the site called Qumran, from which we get the Dead Sea Scrolls. There were also discovered there not just Old Testament documents and fragments, but also discovered there were sectarian documents, rules of practice that probably applied, at least some of them applied to the Qumran community. The Essenes were very patriarchal. They were Sabbath-focused, very strict on the Sabbath. They had complex initiation practices. They rejected temple religion, and maybe this is the primary thing to think about. To them, the temple had become so corrupt that what we need to do is pull away from there until that great eschatological battle takes place and we are redeemed. As I said, they had great eschatological expectation. They accepted the whole Old Testament as scripture along with some other writings. They had a pretty extensive angel theology. And the Essenes aren't directly mentioned in the New Testament, but some people believe that John the Baptist might have had or he's sort of like, in some ways sort of like the Essenes. And let me mention finally the Zealots. The Zealots were loyalists to the Jewish state. Their name comes from a Greek word that means zealous follower. Josephus, historian, calls them the fourth philosophy. Josephus says that the Zealots agree in all other things with the Pharisaic notions, but they have an inviolable attachment to liberty and say that God is to be their only ruler and Lord. So they did not think much of Rome. They were revolutionaries. They worked to achieve political independence from Rome, but not all of them did so by violent means. They are interestingly mentioned in the disciple roster. We're told of Simon the Zealot, who was a follower of Jesus. And it's probably as a result of some zealot activities that Rome came down hard on Jerusalem in AD 70 and destroyed the temple. So it's a diverse world. that Paul is a part of, what holds it all together, I think, is that all of these groups, N.T. Wright says, that are all grappling with the same basic issue. And as we read Romans, we should be thinking about this. And that issue is what it meant to be a part of God's people, to be loyal to Torah, to maintain Jewish identity in the face of an all-encroaching pagan world, and above all, in the view of some, to await the coming kingdom of God. So there's your background. Paul has a Jewish heart. There's some Greek stuff going in his head. There's a Roman Empire always looking down on him, keeping an eye on him, and he's walking the ground of the ancient Mediterranean world, which forms a lot of the ways that people think and act. The end.